My God, AI can really grow companies, but it can destroy them at the same time.
Use AI, but always have a human QA.
That's going to be an interesting one to see if there is actually a lack of human talent.
But AI is great, but it can't come up with solving a business challenge.
More and more companies out there now, they're looking at AI and basically saying, right, get rid of people and just use AI.
Relying completely on AI to do a task could be quite detrimental.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 7 of the Prompted podcast. We're here with myself, Chris Nightgale, and Nick Handley. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good, mate. How are you? It's been it's been a while, actually. It's not. We've actually seen each other relatively frequently this year. Quite nice.
And that being said, we've obviously got quite an interesting, potentially live event coming up, haven't we? So when's that? Is that March time?
Yeah, I think it's end of March, right?
Yes.
I think like 20th of March. Don't quote me on that. It's around the 20th of March.
We'll put some comments in the show notes, but it's ND Digital, basically a great big event of everything marketing and e-commerce, everything like that. Some brilliant speakers there, and we've been asked as part of this to do a live podcast, which we're super excited about. We're going to have the podcast banners out. We're going to have special guests on stage, which is being kept a secret right now. And it's going to be really interesting to talk just like we do, but actually in front of a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think I can probably speak for both of us. I know we were chatting about the special guest that's coming on, and I will gas that person up a lot. I think they're fantastic. And as I said, early in my career, like, there's somebody that I think was quite influential, especially going to events that were hosted at their agency at the time. Leave it there. But yeah, I'm very excited to interview this person.
Agency and a lot of in-house experience as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, stay tuned for that one. And of course, this episode is sponsored by our friends at Optio. These are the guys that help minimize waste and maximize performance across a variety of different media channels. So definitely go and check those guys out. Speak to Ben and tell him that I sent you there. On to the good stuff then. So there's been there's always stuff happening, I feel, in marketing AI. So much we can talk about. I think you and me obviously sit down beforehand and we go through a big list, and it's quite easy to condense it down because there's some really big hitters and big things happening out there at the moment, isn't there? And I think one of the biggest things in the news that's happened over the last couple of weeks has definitely been the ads have kind of been revealed in ChatGPT kind of officially. There's been a lot of hearsay in terms of what the CPMs will be, if it's actually happening, when it's happening, but the fact that they came out and released their own blog article about it recently basically tells you everything that you need to know, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'll eat my hat from our last episode where I thought it was going to be commerce based to start with, and it feels that it's not as commerce based as we thought. But I think you've mentioned the CPCs, and I know that there's been a lot of talk online of how much they're actually going to cost. But I guess it is quite premium space where people are searching. But I'm unsure if you've seen on the other side of it, Claude recently came out with a very clever ad, and I think I might have seen it on LinkedIn, about the LLM spaces and the chat-based spaces shouldn't have ads. It's a safe space to not have them. And they're saying that they're not going to bring ads to their platform, almost as a bit of a slam at ChatGPT. But I do wonder quite often, like, are we going to see ads in those platforms just because you've got, stakeholders, you've got, profitability, there's other things that are happening there that, behind the scenes that as users we don't see. Yeah. But we're also very aware that most people aren't running profitably at all when it comes to the LLM space at the moment. But what's your take on the ChatGPT ads? Like, is it something you're going to be using? It's something that you're starting to look into? Or is it something you see as a bit of a fad? Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I'm definitely kind of telling my clients to be ready for it in whatever guise that looks like. It's an interesting one on Claude. So I think it was the ad that I saw, a basketball player talking to a child, and he starts to come and say, I don't know what it was. It was kind of just saying like ads and sponsored messages and things like that. And I was just thinking, it really dilutes the messaging ads, particularly in a contextual language LLM model environment. So for me, it's going to be interesting whether people engage with it or not. My gut feeling is they will, because I think we mentioned on this podcast before, LLMs and chatbots offer like hyper personalization, nothing that you can ever really do on a normal Google or Bing search unless you've obviously got AI overviews and the rest that are now answering quite lengthy questions. So I actually do think it will be quite successful. I think it'll be expensive. I think it quoted about £60 CPM, something like that, which it's a lot, right? And for anyone that doesn't know, £60 or $60 per 1,000 impressions. So if you've got a campaign that's generating millions of impressions, you can kind of eye up the cost there. It's pretty eye-watering. But that being said, I'm pretty confident that they know what they're doing as well. If you imagine the level of detail that sits behind not just that one query, but the last 100 queries, where they are in the buying journey, it's quite an exciting concept for me. And if you look back on the search days, you had Google, you had Bing, 90% market share on Google, 10% Bing, and Google's always the dominating search engine. Whereas actually now we've got two very, heavyweight partners going at it hand in hand. Probably about, it's going to be maybe 50-50 at the start. And Gemini, particularly in Google, have had to spend so much in advertising just to get Gemini bumped up with its usage because ChatGPT had first mover advantage. So it's going to be an interesting space. I think there's definitely not going to be a monopoly, at least for now. And it's going to be really, really good to see when we can do ads on one or the other. I think the first person to kind of move on to ads, everyone will jump on it. And I think at the moment right now, as February 26, it's a race to see who can release ads first. And it looks like ChatGPT is going to win that race, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think they have always been the first mover. You mentioned it, I feel like the first, I suppose, like the grandparent of the LLM space. They feel like they've been around forever, whereas I suppose ChatGPT, things like Gemini and Claude feel like they've taken a bit longer to take off. And I think you are right that there is a lot of competition in the space. I am somewhat reticent to say that ChatGPT will be around forever. I feel that it may die a bit of a death just because of how big Google are, investing into Gemini, like you've mentioned, but also, the adoption across like Claude at the moment. I'm not sure if you're seeing it online, but I feel there's a lot of people adopting Claude over ChatGPT. Like, I'm probably one of those people, but not in a Claude space, in a Gemini space. I've now moved to Gemini over ChatGPT for most of my daily driving, just purely because it has a better reasoning engine for me. I'm finding it's not as agreeable, which is something that I really struggle with ChatGPT, and I know we've mentioned it hundreds of times over. I really struggle with how agreeable ChatGPT is, that every idea feels great, and that's not what I'm after. I'm asking these tools to reason with me, to give me counters, give me criticisms, and to really flesh out and have somebody to sound wall against. But it feels like ChatGPT doesn't do that. But yeah, I think it's interesting for now, and I do wonder what the main reasons are for ChatGPT adopting ads and OpenAI going down that route. Because I can't remember the bloke's name, but the guy that owns OpenAI, Sam
Altman, is it?
Sam Altman,
Yeah.
there we are. I want to say Sam Sulek, who was a bodybuilder, funnily enough, which would be a hilarious crossover if that ever happened. But yeah, one of the big ones is like he said he didn't want ads on the platform, and he never sort of like, it was never an agreeable thing that we were ever going to do it. And we're now in that space that it is happening. And I wonder whether it's stakeholder led, whether it's pressure led, or whether it's just that ChatGPT as a tool has now hemorrhaged so much money and hemorrhaged and created almost this bubble around it that they now need to, as we said in a previous episode, deflate the bubble and start actually seeing some real use and real world advantage for it being and existing there, not just for something that's a bit of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so many companies that are overinflated, like we said on the last podcast episode. So that bubble won't burst, but it definitely will deflate. And I think if we go back to corporations of old, look at Google, their original slogan was "Don't be evil," something along those lines. And you look at what they've done over the years, the number of companies that are in the RIP list that they've bought and subsequently ditched. And it's an interesting space, so you can never say never in these sorts of things. And I always take what people say, particularly CEOs, with a massive pinch of salt. But that being said, as I'm sure you agree, as performance marketers, we're always going to be led by the numbers. So wherever that lands and whatever is safe environment for our clients to be in, we're going to go there. Quick side note on Pinterest as an additional channel. We're actually seeing a bit of traction in that as of late, and Reddit as well. So there are obviously Google, there's Bing, there's Meta. They're kind of the big three, I guess. But there's so many other channels out there that are really kind of growing and seeing that incremental growth as well. Because naturally, if you're on Google, you're probably on Meta as well. But actually, these other channels are a bit more on the edges, let's say. Are you using those, or have you had any good results in the past?
So we use Reddit ads quite a bit, and it's something that we generally advise that most clients should jump on. I think from a organic point of view as well, Reddit's an incredibly powerful engine, to engage with community, but to also understand what people are searching and understand what thoughts and feelings are. I see it almost like the YouGov of the wider world, but it's a really good opinion generator, and it's something that for the PR team, it's pretty decent to use, and something I'd always heed them to, go and investigate. But from a paid point of view, yeah, we're using Reddit, and it's come on leaps and bounds. I'm not sure if you used Reddit years ago for an advertising point of view. You couldn't even place a pixel on your site. You couldn't track anything off Reddit, and now that's completely changed. They've also partnered up, I think, is it with Phosphor that they've partnered up with to start doing incrementality studies. So they're now using an external validation tool. Phosphor, if nobody really knows, have you used Phosphor before?
Never used it, no.
Phosphor is fantastic. It's essentially an MTA tool, so similar to Triple Whale, but in my opinion, sort of slightly better. I'll leave my other thoughts parked on triple whale because I'm just not a fan of it. But yeah, they've partnered with things like Phosphor to show, real world incrementality of advertising on Reddit, which is pretty damn cool, and something that I think measurement is a hot thing for me. 2026 is the year of measurement, and I think at time of filming this, it is currently Chinese New Year. It's the year of a horse, year of a measurement for me at the moment. But yeah, I've used Reddit for years as a personal user as well, and I think it's probably my most frequented and used social platform outside of LinkedIn, which yet again always makes me feel a bit lame. But I think Reddit's got a lot of power, and I think 'cause it's community led and community driven, like it's always going to have a lot more valid thoughts and valid views, and if it's recommended, and this is where I see Reddit as being an incredible tool, not from just an ads point of view in a paid space, but in an organic space. If you can engage with your community and engage as a content creator, engage as a games designer or anything else in that matter, you're going to massively, I think, have a leg up on other people, because I think people really care for that now more than other things. So in sum, yeah, I've used Reddit and we've had pretty decent results. I think you just have to get your messaging absolutely on point for Reddit. And also in a lot of ways, if you are doing sponsored posts, lock your comments. I think we've seen it happen time and time again where people haven't, and you get really bad engagement if it comes across too salesy.
That's a really good point, a really good actionable bit of takeaway as well there. I've had some funny stories on this. Like you said, the community point is absolutely key. You're building a community of people there, and you want to get in the right communities, not communities that are just going to roast you from day dot, and then you've got everyone with pitchforks wondering what the hell you're saying. You've got to time it right. But I've seen some really interesting examples of how people search on Reddit, which might be different. There's communities of people. I've got a jewelry client that are on there, and they will say things like, how do I measure my girlfriend's ring finger while she's sleeping? Crazy things like that. And you're like, right, no one would have ever searched that on Google, but okay, they're talking about it and this sort of stuff. And it's like, how do I, do I measure her pre-existing jewelry? Do I go and get print off a ring measurer from Argos's website? Whatever that is. And there's people sharing ideas, and it's very natural. They're not trying to sell you anything. But if you can get a sponsored post around those terms, it's obviously a trust booster, isn't it? So yeah, really interesting space. And I think from an advertising perspective, if you're not on these channels, it's definitely worth at least an exploratory go, isn't it?
100%. I think also just from the power of Reddit organically, like if we look at how much it feeds search results on Google, or we look at how much it's appearing with anchors within LLMs, like it's a huge opportunity for a lot of brands, and I feel that people are waking up to it. I don't think it's something that's widely used everywhere, but I think Reddit is the next frontier and the next bastion that people are going to really jump on from both an organic and a paid point of view. So yeah, I think it's a good call out. Pinterest is one I've not had as much experience with, but I'm interested to hear your experience, because I imagine you've probably done some ads on Pinterest.
Yeah, it is a good one. I'd say it's not as performance-led. We've not seen quite the same results. It's quite creative hungry, as you can imagine. But again, it's about the incrementality of the audience. And if you can start connecting the layers between, right, they were introduced with us on Pinterest, and you do your analytics to understand, right, we hit them again with a meta ad or got them on Google. It's that part of the multi-channel layered approach, I think. A lot of advertisers I work with, they're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds a month. They've completely, chucked. They've got like 80, 90, 100% impression share, and they're spending an absolute ton on CPCs of like 100, 200 quid a click in some industries, which is bananas. And actually, if they can just go into a different channel where their audience still lives, but maybe at a different time of the day, it's that incremental reach. So it's none of these channels on the edges, I don't think, are one fixed solution for any business, but they should be part of that wider mix for sure. Speaking of obviously tools, platforms, things like that, I think one thing I'm really excited about is a new segment in our kind of podcast, which is Tools Corner. So I think you and me, we use tools all the time. New tools that we don't bother with, tools that are rubbish. And I thought it'd be worth just sharing that insight. I've got some great feedback from tools that I've used, and some people have told me about tools they use as well. I think it's just a good environment for us to talk about it, really. One of them that I came across, which shout out to Scott at Journey Further, who heads up the paid media team there. He used goblin.tools. Have you ever heard of that?
I've not, but what a great name.
What a great name. Probably not too expensive to buy the domain for that either, right? But what it basically is completely free tool, but you can go in and basically ask the tool how to do anything, like anything from how to set up a PPC campaign, how to water my plant, how to set up a camera rig for a podcast. And what it'll do is it'll break it down into constituent parts to how to do that. So for example, buy a tripod, set up the tripod, power up the camera and stuff like that. And then if something's too complex, you can then break that down further. So you can say like, well, how do I set up a tripod properly? And just expand that out and break it down. And you can keep breaking that down infinitely till some rather funny, amusing stuff that's just like put one leg out. Do you know what I mean? Really niche stuff. But it's a really good use case, for example. I know that he's used it for his PPC team for like softer skills or maybe some account setups, just to sort of say, go away and do this. And, it's not as technical as what maybe you and me would do when we set up a Google account, but it's a really good starter for 10. So it's definitely one for free that I'd recommend going and trying out.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I'm just thinking it sounds almost like a crossover between, like, do you remember the, like the X for Dummies books? Like, and then the like WikiHow or anything like that online. So, like, wait, it's just like a breakdown of like how to have a hard conversation with your girlfriend or things like that. It sounds a really intuitive platform, one that I don't think I've used, but I will definitely be checking out. So big up Scott for giving you some powerful tools.
Thank you, Scott. In the same meeting as well, full transparency, I was speaking to Tio. So he heads up SEM stories in Edinburgh, which is a brilliant event that he put on last year. And he was talking to me about OpenClaw, which I know you have heard of because you obviously were chatting about that before. Do you know what OpenClaw is? Or?
As far as I'm aware, and you're going to probably correct me here, it's a way of creating agents using OpenAI's tools such as ChatGPT and other bits like that. And I believe it's just been bought by OpenAI as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's quite a big piece as well. So imagine they paid quite a fee for that. But what it does is it integrates with all the things like your WhatsApp, your calendar, things like that. And it basically allows you to seamlessly flow from one platform to the other. So I think on top of my head, you might say to a WhatsApp bot, like, set something in my calendar, it'll go away and do it. And it basically just plugs into all of these things natively, which me and Tia were talking is to some degree is actually maybe a bit of a security risk if you're not happy with everything that's going on between all of your WhatsApps and all of your Google calendars. But I think the art of the possible here is massive, and the fact that OpenAI have bought it as well shows you that they're like heavily invested in what's going on there.
Yeah, I think as well, just the agent space is probably the next thing that people are speaking about. I feel like people are quite often conflating agents with automation. N8N isn't necessarily, an agent space, but you can incorporate agents into workflows. And it's interesting to see that OpenAI are, buying things that, like OpenClaw, for example, where it is like agent-led. And I think it is going to be the next thing, and probably the next like softer, organic thing that happens within LLMs and, within AI in a lot of ways. And OpenClaw is one that I've wanted to try out for a while, and I've just not had the time to use it. But I think I am somewhat reticent to, give it access to everything. But one of the big things for me is like, you said about that calendar side of things, like having ADHD, if I can remember in the moment to, message and WhatsApp a tool that's then going to pop it into my calendar and time block that out, that could be hugely beneficial for productivity for me, and something that I feel I'm going to say this with every tool we do. I want to test it. Yeah. I think with that, it's more of a lifestyle adoption as well. So I change how I work day to day instead of it just being a tool that I use on a one-off.
Exactly. And I think for these things, there's so many tools that do one thing of that. So they might, let's say, just connect with WhatsApp or just connect with your calendar. But for one tool to connect with everything is kind of useful. I've got the list in front of me. It can connect with WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, Twitter, Spotify, ChatGPT, Claude, Gmail, Messenger, like a lot of stuff. And I think, you probably could do this in the back end if you were going through an API or a webhook or doing something quite code heavy. This feels something that's very much kind of user friendly and doing a lot of the legwork for you, which I really rate.
Yeah, I think it makes things almost like for the layman out there, I wouldn't necessarily say the layman, the everyday layman, but the marketing layman where we used to, working with tools or tech, like it could actually be quite a game changer for people within the marketing space. Yeah. I say game changer, not as in like it's going to completely revolutionize, but it's going to help with productivity, especially if you're a one-man band or, you're a smaller agency setup. Like there's a lot of heavy lifting that can be done there, especially from an admin point of view. Yeah. And I can imagine for yourself where you're like, you do everything. Yeah. And I know you've got a few people you work with, but imagine you're able to send, one of your contractors or somebody you work with, a WhatsApp, and then, an agent will then take it and pop it as a calendar invite and then maybe itemize what you want to talk about. It's quite powerful instead of you having to go through the rigmarole. It's 10 minutes out of the day, but there's also the headspace for it as well.
Yeah, agreed. And then if you times that 10 minutes a day over a week, that's nearly an hour. And then if you do for a couple more tasks, that's maybe half an hour a day. It can be quite massive. But yeah, I feel like I'm doing everything at the moment. raising invoice, I'm paying bills, I'm paying myself. I'm trying to get to grips with all these tools. But, you know, Xero, for example, is a great example where they've just introduced something called Jax, which is an AI assistant that you can use to ask it things about your accounts. Or what you can do is it can start to auto reconcile things. So quite a boring accounting thing. And I really had no interest in accounting when I started Can Do. But what it can do is auto reconcile things. So let's just say we book out this podcast studio. It knows that it's a certain expense. It knows if there is or isn't VAT on it. And it auto reconciles it for my accountant to look at. And if you just times that over, imagine like every card purchase that goes through for a business or every ads credit or everything like that, to have it automatically done was really, really cool. So yeah, I'm definitely a Xero converted member, and I definitely use that for everything. And I know that you're, from back to a marketing point of view, you're definitely using a few other tools or getting into them, aren't you? Have you given any a go?
Yeah, there's a few that I'm using daily at the moment, and one of them is crisp.ai, which I would highly recommend anybody that works a bit more remote to try out. It's a free plugin. You can get a premium version of it, but it's a noise cancellation software. But it also does meeting recordings as well without having a bot sat in the meeting. So quite often when you go into a Google Meet and it'll have somebody's like note taker in the background, it does it behind the scenes. And I always will tell people that I'm using it because I think it's incredibly unethical to record somebody without their consent.
Yeah.
I actually think it might be illegal in some ways,
Yeah.
especially in the UK. But CRISPR's being an absolute lifesaver. It does active noise cancellation. It uses AI technology to listen to the environment and then bring down the sound within that environment. So I've taken calls at airports, I've done it in noisy cafes, I've done it on busy trains, and quite often people say that they can't hear anything other than my voice.
Wow.
And it's something that I found very beneficial, especially with running, and being part of an agency where I'm speaking to clients. I need to come across to have a level of, like a decorum that is professional and that people can hear me, and it actually helps with that a fair bit.
Nice.
And one of the big things for me is, like, you're probably aware, I work everywhere. Like, I've worked in all the different countries, and I can't always, be sure that I'm going to have a safe and quiet space to work. So CRISPR's saved my life.
Nice.
So many times I'm taking really busy calls. I'm not sure if you use anything for noise cancellation, but if you don't, try CRISP. It is 100% worthwhile.
It's a good shout for sure. I think I've been on calls where someone's making a coffee behind me with one of those really loud coffee machines, and I'm just like, this was just using Google Meets, I think, and that noise cancellation. And I'm like, can you hear that? And they're like, no. I think I once had it where there was a fire alarm going off in the background, and Google actually cancelled that out. So that's probably, CRISP is probably taking that to the next level. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be checking it out. I know when I was on a Google Meets, I heard a story. This is completely not my story, of someone that did a Google Meet, and they had two bots, the two ones that joined the call to listen and pick up notes, but it said like Gemma's note taker, for example. This person was speaking to like Gemma's note taker and Jack's note taker. It just thought it was them, but with their cameras off, and it started the meeting, and she started yapping away for 5 minutes before realizing that they weren't actually there. So yeah, maybe I just don't like someone being present like that. But I think if you need to be transparent that it's doing it. It is there. I know that Google Meets uses Gemini to collate notes, but it doesn't actively look like it's sat on the call, which again is really useful and really handy. I use like the Google Workspace subscription to just make sure that I've got Gemini that's listening and taking notes, and I think you get access to like 2 terabytes of storage and a load of other things as well. So it is really, really good. I think you get access to VO, which is terrible for ads. But actually, I think, as we've always said, if you've got like a human-led approach, it can be quite useful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with things like CRISP, and I think this is where people often overlook AI usage. And for me, that's a quality of life thing. So it's something that I use because it improves the quality of life. It improves the quality of my work as well. And I think moving on, like, I know we've both used this, and it's something that I did want to speak about, and I think you did as well. Gamma. And Gamma is like, I'll be very transparent. I used Gamma, so I think while we're recording this, I'm starting my new agency. Like, I now work at a company called Connected Free, and their performance director, which is pretty cool. It's a step out of paid media, but still very much intrinsically tied to things like measurement, and that's why I love that space, and I'm really happy to be doing it. But one of the things I actually used during my interview process, which was a very fun interview process where I had a call with Tim, and we're just chatting. He was like, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. And instead of me going away and creating a full deck, just because I didn't have the headspace or time, just given that work was busy at my previous agency, I spoke to ChatGPT, got it to create an entire deck outline, and then I popped that into Gamma. And for anyone that doesn't know Gamma, I think it's it's a good one for deck skeletons, in my opinion. It's not something that I can use wholesale, or I've not found a way of using it wholesale, but it's a deck builder that allows you to create PowerPoints and PDFs quite quickly just by giving it a prompt. And then you can edit and use, it's modular, so you can change it when it's in there. But I use it in conjunction with an LLM to essentially talk about what I want to say, what should be on each slide, and then it produces like relatively coherent slides. Sometimes the images are quite off, so I just delete them out or add my own in. But it saved me a lot of time for just getting, I suppose, complex ideas out of my head and getting it onto paper in a way that is able to be demonstrated to somebody else that I can speak over. And I imagine you're probably using it in a slightly different way to me, just given that I'm using it more as a way of explaining to people instead of actually selling or pitching.
Yeah, it's a good one. I've not used it too much, but I've definitely dabbled in it. It is good for decks. I've also used Markifact, if you've heard of that.
I've not.
It's a really good one. It's based on a credit system, so it can get quite expensive, but it can plug into Google and Meta, for example, and create a deck, pull in stats, and then write commentary based on those stats. So you can have a slide that's like the top best creatives, and it'll pull what the actual individual creatives look like. You can have a separate slide that's then based on actual graphs of data, so clicks and cost over time. And then you can just do a quick kind of actually change clicks and cost to conversions and CTR, and it'll just spit it out again. So that's quite a good one. And then for websites, have you ever used something called Lovable? I'm hearing a lot about that at the moment.
I've not used Lovable, but I have used, and I am currently using one called Framer, which is very similar. There's Cursor, Lovable, Framer. They all do very similar things, in my opinion.
Okay.
But I can speak about Framer a tiny bit if we don't mind leaving Lovable to the side. Framer is a website builder that uses AI and almost an LLM plugin where you can tell it what you want to create and give it designs, and it will almost wireframe it for you, and then you can fill in the blanks. But long story short, I'm running Manchester Marathon, but on the side of that, I'm raising money for charity. And whilst I want to raise money for Manchester Mind, an incredible mental health charity, I wanted to do something a bit different. And so I bought the domain nobodyrunsalone.com. And I was like, I've never built a website in my life. And I was like, I sort of want to be able to build a website and have my own story on there. And essentially, if you donate £10 or above, you get your name on my t-shirt. And then it's the idea of everybody is doing it in solidarity. So the idea of nobody should go through mental health alone. I'm running this marathon. As you can probably tell, I'm a 17 stone, 6 foot man. I'm not built for marathon running by any stretch of the imagination. But I wanted to build a website to explain my story and then, generate PR and generate, donations as well. And people doing that sort of stuff. I use Framer for it. So I'm currently, which should be live by the time we put this podcast out, nice. I've built an entire website using it, and I've spoken to it. I've not actually touched or changed any text or anything. I've spoken to an LLM to, write down what I'm thinking, and then used Nick Handley bot, essentially. I think I might mention this agent a while back, to then put it into my tone and my style. And then I've popped it all into Framer, and it's contextualized it, put it into the different blocks that exist, and allowed me to create a website. And then it even allows me to point the DNS to my own URL as well. Which is hosted through, I think it might be GoDaddy I'm using, right. some terrible URL hosting and buying tool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been transformational for me, and I'm just like, it allows me. I'm like, if I want to start an e-com business or spin something up quite quickly, I reckon a Framer on top of like Shopify or something like that could be an incredibly powerful way of doing it.
Definitely. I mean, firstly, fair play on running a marathon. It's no like small feat at all. So I'm quite happy with my part run 5Ks, and that's me done. So yeah, good luck for that. And I'm sure we'll all be shouting you on from the sidelines. Secondly, yeah, it's so easy now to build an app. It builds apps as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Builds app, build websites, builds concepts fundamentally of something that you want to set up. So for example, something that I've always thinking about back in the day was I live nearish to like the Wigan Stadium. So whenever there's an event on, traffic is mad.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, well, what if you just built an app? So you had all the football teams on there, you selected Wigan, and then you get a ping if there's an hour before the game's kicking off. It's a small thing, but actually if you did that, it could be quite useful to people that live in the local area to avoid going shopping, maybe leave it 2 hours because there's a game on. And you could just build that literally within about 30 seconds on any of these platforms, which is really, really cool. I guess from a flip side, so these are the tools we're really excited about. I guess the other side of it is, what does it mean for jobs in the industry? I've got a mate who's a web developer, and, he's kind of thinking, right, all these people are using AI. What does that mean for me, and what does it mean for our future? I know we've spoke about it before from a marketing perspective, and that we always agree that it's definitely a human-led approach, but I know more and more companies out there now, they're looking at AI and basically saying, right, get rid of people and just use AI. A lot of them are then going back on the word. But I'm seeing it more and more in the industry at the moment. I don't know if you've seen anything like that.
I've seen it a bit, and I think there's been a few examples of where companies have had to go back on it. I think Duolingo might have been one of them that had to rehire a fair few staff as well, which is always an interesting one, because I generally do believe a human-led approach is AI enablement is a huge thing, but it should always remain incredibly human. It feels like cliche now, because I feel like a lot of people are saying that, but I think relying completely on AI to do a task could be quite detrimental. I think, let's talk the paid space. If you relied on AI, I think it might have been Kirk Williams is his name, I believe.
Yes, that's it.
Kirk Williams, yeah, Zato. I think it's Zato. I could be butchering this, but Kirk has the PC Ponderings book. That's how I know. He mentioned this, and I completely agree and subscribe to what he's saying, is that if you don't understand how to do it and you're relying on AI to do it for you, if that fails or the system breaks, you're then left with unoptimizable campaigns. You're left with potential huge gaps. And, somebody like you, for example, or me that's done, say, paid media for 10 plus years could come in and be like, actually, we can grab this and, take the work from somebody. I see that in the same vein as people relying on AI to do, say, creative jobs or to build websites. I'm like, it's good, but you still need a level of human input, because let's be honest, I think I was chatting to my developer, a guy called Matt. He's a freelance web developer, works with Magento sites mainly, but he uses he uses LMs and he uses AI to help check his code, but it's like quite often it does get it wrong, and that the code that's built is relatively rough and ready. I think it allows the barrier seems lower for people to get into doing it, but I think if you want upkeep and maintenance and more sophisticated sites or sophisticated apps, you should really be having that human developer that sits behind it. But yeah, I think we're going to see a shift. I think there's going to be less jobs in the market for things that can be AI'd, but I think there'll still be a presence there for people, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think as well, to some degree, people are not just getting made redundant, or companies are not just saying we don't need humans anymore. It's actually having quite a big impact on people choosing to leave certain industries. I remember seeing an article the other day of people in the agency world, and I think it was people under 24 or 23. There's actually quite a mass exodus of people that are choosing to step away from an agency space in digital marketing specifically, because they're worried about AI. The job hasn't necessarily been taken away. They're just worried about their long-term prospects in the career. So that's going to be an interesting one to see if there is actually a lack of human talent, because everyone is relying on AI. And actually that way, it's going to be even easier to stick out like a sore thumb if you're using human AI, if you're using human level first content, because everyone else is using AI and you're actually providing something useful, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. On the juniors and, younger people within the marketing space in particular, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, but I'm actually deeply saddened, and it's something I'm a bit concerned about, is that we're not getting younger talent in, and I don't think that's just down to mass leavers or people not wanting to join the marketing space. I think we're getting a lot of people in positions of hiring or positions of purse holders that are probably not investing as much into younger talent, and it's something I'll always advocate is that AI is great, but younger talent, like AI can't come up with the next best idea. It can't come up with solving a business challenge. It can't come up with things that are outside the parameters or the box that exist online. And I feel that a lot of the juniors I've worked with have come up with phenomenal ideas, and I really, really value them as people as well. And I think to continue agency culture, it's 100% needed. And it does make me sad that we're seeing less jobs available for junior level staff. We hired Impression when I was working there. We hired 7 juniors. It was nice to have them in the business and get new and fresh blood in. And I think not just from the fact that they're doing jobs that none of us want to do because we're never cutting the teeth and we're doing search term reports and all the other crap that we don't really want to do as seniors. It's good to see them find new ways and innovative ways to tackle paid accounts and to look at ways of working. And I just think AI massively misses that, and this is where the human input's huge, and just because you're 21, 22 doesn't mean it's any less important than somebody that's 32 like myself.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I'm a big advocate as well of hiring young talent. That's where the future lies fundamentally. And full transparency, I think when we started this pod, I was using Descript and its AI abilities to kind of flip and fold and change shots and all that kind of stuff. Firstly, I didn't know how on earth to use these platforms. Secondly, AI only does so much. We get Jack in, who shout out to Jack, does all of our videography work and podcasting for us. And some of the ideas that he's had for, like the trailer shots, the actual podcast shots, the intro, the collaboration, the backgrounds, the text overlays, they've been really, really good. And I'm convinced there's no AI yet that can do that. And we need the humans. We need to build those relationships, don't we?
Absolutely. Even with Jack in particular, because we've worked with him, and I can't remember how Jack is. He might be 22-ish, something like that. But having the bounce back and having a sounding more like, we have these ideas. Can you help us develop them? And as you said, he's coming up with new ways of filming, new ways of doing editing, and for us, it's quite powerful because neither of us have, I suppose, a strong creative brain, and having that, and I feel that with that, like Descript, for example, great to get it started, but it massively undervalues the power of creativity.
And I guess on the side of AI not being able to do stuff properly, I think you've seen the same post on Reddit as I have. There was something about how AI made up analytics. That was stats that were being shared with the board, with managing directors, with CEOs of the company, and they were making big investments and big business decisions based on data that was presented to them so confidently through an AI dash that turned out to be completely wrong data. So we'll share a link to the Reddit post because it is quite shocking. I put a LinkedIn post on about it as well. But they say, we're now going to have to review every Q4 decision we've taken. Legal is involved. People might get fired. And I just looked at this and went, my God, AI can really grow companies, but it can destroy them at the same time. Can you imagine the number of headaches and meetings that are now going on, the amount of work that's been created because of a bad AI decision? I don't know what your take on it is, but it's definitely made me bit anxious, let's say.
Yeah, it made me anxious as well. And I think it's how much do we trust AI? And I think there's, especially in this post, I believe it was posted in our analytics. I actually subscribed to it. I think when you sent me it, I was like, I've seen this and it's an insane story. But for those that haven't seen it as well, I think just for context is that an AI seems to have been hallucinating numbers, and then that hallucination has, caused a change in the data, and then that's, continued to compound until the data is completely untrue and it's completely false. It doesn't even exist. It's not company-led data. It's essentially data that's been hallucinated into existence by an AI system and an LLM. And I think it is incredibly scary, because if you're using it and you're not fact checking your data, I think that's one thing we've always spoken about is use AI, but always have a human QA, because without that quality assurance from a human, but you don't know whether it's true or not. And I think this is the scary thing, is that there's a lot of people in powerful positions that are quite busy or, just take it as gospel. And I think we should always be questioning and looking at the numbers that are put in front of us, or even the facts that it gives out. I think we've seen hallucinations, or we've seen, AI get things wrong all the time. I think there was something I was searching about Bradford City Football Club, being an avid Bradford City supporter, which is hilarious to say because I'm not the biggest football fan, but my dad loves it, so I follow Bradford. I was asking about Dean Windass, a player that played for Bradford, and whether he'd had what his book was called. So he brought out a book years ago on some of his personal struggles, and the AI was like, oh, there's no book by Dean Windass, the football player. And I was like, pretty certain there is. And then I used it again a day later, it's about, actually, I'm going to query this again, and it found the book and pulled it straight up. And I think there's that is a challenge for me, where it's obviously look for a different Dean Windass, it's not matched for profile, it's not matched what it's needed, and it's giving me false information. Whereas I'm like, I know this book exists, so I could Google it, which I did. And I was like, I'll go back and have a look again. Great book, by the way. I can't remember what it's called now, but I'd highly recommend having a look at Dean Windass's book on his career and mental health. It's a really good read for any bloke out there that's having a bit of a struggle with mental health as well. Fair
play. Definitely, we'll put again show notes in there for you guys to have a look at that. But it just says it so confidently. I know last time I was talking about the whole Royal Mail incident where I sent something off that was 60 quid. It turns out it was 70 quid. And I know Scott at Jenny Further got really mad in the last podcast for saying that, and it'll probably rile them up again. But everyone does rely on it so heavily. ChatGPT and Gemini, what it says, we believe it's scoured the internet a million times over and it's given us the best result. Sometimes it's really not, and it does say that at the bottom, don't trust what we say necessarily, it might get it wrong. But there are so many people that will just take it for gospel, rightly and wrongly. So if it saves you an hour, reinvest 5 minutes of that into just double checking a few stats, and it will save you a lot of long-term headache, particularly in our game of PPC where it is all about the numbers. It will certainly go a long way.
Absolutely. And just on that as well, as a nice little safeguard that I use when I use ChatGPT and Gemini, I'll try load it up in canvas mode so you can see what it's actually doing in the background. It allows you to look at, the code base that it's creating, essentially it's code, and we just leave the text in front of us, and also get it to give you citations as well of where it's pulling everything from. So it will normally do it, but sometimes it won't cite everything. So always ask for citations of where it's found information, and use Canvas to be able to understand what it's actually doing and whether it's looking at your data correctly. Because quite often, when you do put data in there, it sometimes won't read all of it. It may read a sample level of that data, especially if it's a large file. So it's always worth double checking.
For sure, that sounds good. And on the final point you mentioned there as well on mental health, one note I've got, which is all about sharpening the saw. And I thought it was quite a nice analogy actually. This is something that I've been practicing over the last few weeks because, as you can imagine, one-man band, if it's busy, it's really busy on one or two people. And actually sharpening the saw was a whole concept that, again, we'll put the book in the show notes. But it was about if you're in a wood and you're sharpening a tree with a saw, if you're cutting down a tree with a saw and you keep going, you're going to get worn out, and the blade is going to get blunt pretty quickly. Whereas actually, if you take 5-10 minutes out, you sit down, you relax, you gain that energy back, you sharpen your saw so it stops being blunt and is sharp again. Then when you go back to that sawing the tree, it's going to be just as efficient as when you were at the start. Otherwise, and you can get through so many more trees so much more quickly by actually taking a break rather than just going at the same tree and another tree with a really blunt saw. So that's just something that I heard recently in an episode of a seminar that I listened to, and I thought it was worth sharing here today because it's some pretty sound advice for anyone who's just constantly going through the grind. Actually take a step back, think bigger picture, and give yourself a break. That's definitely what I've been practicing the last couple of days.
Very, very sobering as part of this as well. Because I know with AI and the way we speak about it, it can come across a bit hustly, but we're using it for optimization, for process improvement, for being able to do more. But I think you are right, taking that step back and allowing thought to happen, or allowing your body to relax and your brain to relax is hugely beneficial. I found even with running, with the marathon training I'm doing, I'm finding that the productivity I have the day after, even the same day if I'm doing like a 5k on an easy run, I'm finding that I am a lot more productive by taking that time out. And as much as it feels counterintuitive, you are 100% right that it allows you to have clearer thought and re-tackle a problem in a way that you may not have done to start with if you're completely clouded and just moving from task to task.
Definitely agree. It's definitely one to take away for sure. Right then, and to end the episode, as always, people are loving this, is the quiz questions. So 3 quick fire questions for you today, Nick. First one is a bit more general marketing, but in a landmark campaign demonstrating personalization at scale, which brand used a generative algorithm to design 7 million completely unique product labels? So you've got a multiple choice here. Was it Coke, Heinz, Nutella, or Burger King?
Ooh, I'm going to go with Heinz just because it's got a larger array of product within the mix.
So interesting, it was Nutella.
Serious?
Yeah, I thought it was Coke actually, because you know how they did the names for everybody?
Yeah.
I thought it was that, but actually, yeah, Nutella did 7 million different variations using AI, which is pretty mad, and I'm just going to have to go and have a look at some of them.
Oh, 100%.
That will be insane. Secondly, highlighting a massive shift in digital content creation, a recent 2026 benchmark report revealed that what percentage of images shared on social media are now AI generated or AI edited. So you've got 25, 43, 71 or 95%.
I'm going to go and hopefully I might be a bit too innocent here and, wishful thinking, but I'm going to go with 25%, but I do think it could be more.
I wish it's 25. It's 71%.
Serious? 71%?
Which is AI created or edited. I think basically it's the amount of AI slop that's just getting pounded out is all AI generated, and that outweighs probably quite significantly then as a ratio of 1 to 4 of human-led first content.
Well, we see it on LinkedIn all the time, like how much AI slop gets thrown out on there, and you see images. And I actually think, side note very quickly before we do move on to the next question, the content creation sticker that gets put on AI imagery.
Yes.
I think that should happen across every platform, and I know it does across Instagram and stuff like that, but I think there should be a way of identifying it and being able to you have to put it in captions or descriptions or something of being able to identify it's AI edited or generated. I think it's only for AI generated imagery at the moment on some platforms.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily edited, and I think that we need to change that narrative, much like we did with when influencer posts came out, and then you have to like hashtag ad, for example.
Yeah.
I think we need to do the exact same thing. So I think it's creating a lot of I'll go down the beauty standards and beauty norms. I think it's creating a lot of toxicity within society of like what people should be looking like or who people should be aspiring to be, and especially for a younger generation. Not me, I personally don't care anymore. I don't even use socials, but I'm like, if I was 20 odd, I'd probably be quite impacted by that.
You'd be massively influenced.
Yeah.
There is one company, and I can't remember the name of them, that actively are going out now and saying we don't use AI for any of our
That's cool.
beauty models and stuff like that. So again, hats off to them, and I'll find out who it is. And then finally, when looking at operational productivity gains of integrating generative AI into daily marketing workflows like content drafting, data analysis, and campaign setup, how much time does the average marketer now save per week? Is it 1 to 2 hours, 4 to 5 hours, 11 to 13 hours, or 12 to 25 hours, do you reckon?
I reckon it's about just over a day's worth of work. I reckon it's like the 11 to 13.
Bob on. Yeah. It's quite a lot when you think about it
It
per
is.
week. Yeah, so it definitely adds up. And 1 out of 3, not bad.
Yeah, I'll take 1 out of 3. And I think it's an interesting point around the 11 to 13 hours. Something I'd love to explore further is how people are actually using that time now. Are they sacking it off and doing the washing if they're working from home, or are they providing more value to clients? And I think that it's probably going to be a mix of both, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of putting on the washer when I'm home,
course.
but equally I love to reinvest in my time, and actually I think when I'm working from home I'm working overtime to my own detriment. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. But I think that nicely ties it up, doesn't it? Yeah, thanks for joining here today, guys. Obviously episode 7 of the Prompted podcast. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, please do like and subscribe. Even let us know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, what tools are you using, and hopefully see you guys on the next episode. Bye bye for now.
Cheers, guys.